Hey y'all, just showing a video going over how I do melee and range earth DPS. Right now I'm running a pet build for both, and it does pretty solid damage overall. Like, you're not going to beat people, with the meta precision shit, but for the most part I'm competitive and everything, so I'm all good. Right now I showed my affinity mods, so it's kind of standard might, and then the other two whatever. Just showing the DPS gear that I have from 360, so full elite, and just showing the white mods that I use. Again, those are fairly standard as well. And then on my utility belt, supply drop, orbital, DPS pet, and the DPS trinket. And then I have the henchman, which I'll switch out for the orbital and just keep them both off cooldown. I recommend everyone get that cola, the Kryptonian cola or whatever it's called. Yeah, really good. And just showing the pet build with the artifacts I'm using. So it's Quizlet, Source Shard, and Grim. And I kind of feel like if you're going to do a pet build, might as well go all out. These are the best or the main pet artifacts you can use. Dead King Scepter is another one. I haven't any experience with it, so I just showed the stats. And then my augments, all might, because you're doing most of the damage through might or through your pets, but you are using might abilities, so I would recommend to use might. And then just the allies I'm using: Flashpoint, Batman, Nubia, Emperor Aquaman. They're kind of whatever, except for Emperor Aquaman. If you're doing a pet build, highly recommend you get him. He boosts damage for your pets whenever you take damage, and when you get him to rank 10, he boosts the damage by 10%. So it's a pretty substantial boost. So that's the one I would recommend. And just showing how I spec my skill points. You don't have to, you can just get one into whatever weapon you use. I like to get all of them just because on occasion I use the combos to save power or whatever. And just showing the movement mode innates, just to scroll down to get those. I have Pheromone Bloom because sometimes I'll use a Supercharge build, and Pheromone Bloom is just another Supercharge that I'll throw in there along with Entome. And just showing how I spec the skill points: crit chance, crit damage, max out might. And then some people, I know that I have the weapons, but those are more for fun. They aren't part of my rotation, so I don't put anything into precision. I just go all health for survivability. And just showing, I got Crystal Golem. I feel like a pet build is best with Earth or Sorcery. I know other power sets have pets, like Ice has Snow Devil, Nature has Swarm, but I think it works best with Earth and Sorcery. You could run the Robot Sidekick as well, but I like this setup. And if you are running Crystal, you need Fortified Golem. I see some loadouts where people have Crystal but no Fortified Golem. It doesn't make any sense because she's not getting any power unless you give her power. The only time she would get power is in between fights when you're out of combat. So you need Fortified Golem. And then Godwave Strength, which is given by the artifact Source Shard. That's the kind of the bread and butter of any pet build loadout is Source Shard. And you want to have abilities that'll get Source Shard off a cooldown. So I just have Unstoppable, Jackhammer, and Entome. So the only downside I think to pet builds is that it does kind of limit the loadout you can use. So I'm just going over Quizlet to show why I have the Supercharge, because Refractal Beam, when you use a Supercharge, basically Quizlet will use a Supercharge as well. So what you want to do is try to use Godwave Strength before you use your Supercharge, so that Quizlet will hit just a bit harder. So this is my normal setup, but if I'm just clearing ads, what I'll usually do is I'll throw on Localized Tremor. Tectonic Break does the exact same damage as Localized Tremor. The only difference is Tectonic Break has a wider range and it costs more power. So normally I just run Localized Tremor since it has the same range as Jackhammer. And it's a bit cheaper. So you can use Tectonic Break, it's fine, but I just prefer Localized Tremor just because it has the same range as Jackhammer and it's cheaper than Tectonic Break. So I think next, because like with my tank video, I can't do audio when I when I just record, so I have to like go over it, so I don't remember everything. But I'm just showing just a because with the pet build, you don't really have a 1, 2, 3, 4 loadout. You want to have quick using abilities, so that's why I have the setup that I have, because you want to get God Wave Strength to reset. You have a 25% chance every time you use an ability off of Trey to get it to reset. So that's why I try to just use quick melee abilities. And if you can, once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to try to set up God Wave Strength right before you use Fortify Golem, or right before you use a Supercharge to get the most out of Quizlet. And that's my melee. And then for the ranged, everything else is the same. Just 2 abilities change, where I'm using Sandstorm and what's it, Pebble Blast? Because those are the 2 best single target abilities that Earth has. And the same thing with my melee build, if I don't have enough Supercharge for Entome, or if we're just clearing some ads in a hallway, I'll just throw on Debris Field. And this is just a sample rotation of how that looks. And it's always hard to get accurate numbers when you are testing a pet build on a sparring target, because the sparring target will give crystal power. So it's not going to be 1-to-1. But if you try this in a raid with Emperor Aquaman, artifacts up, you have enough skill points, whatnot, you'll do solid damage. And then another benefit of pet builds is you don't need a shit ton of skill points to get the most out of them, because the pets are tied to your CR, not your stats. So, and I think next I just show what Quizlet does with a Supercharge. I don't compare with Source Shard and without Source Shard. I think I just show with Source Shards. So you see the numbers she does, or it does, with God Wave Strength activated before the Supercharge. It shoots out a little beam, just hits 1 target. I normally don't run a 10,000 Supercharge. I would like to run Earthquake, just because it looks cool as shit. But it's not very feasible in most content, just the way, because it is a 10,000, and then also you can get interrupted before you use the whole thing. So I was mentioning, your loadout is kind of limited. You need the pet, you need to give the power to the pet, and you need God Wave Strength. And then you're most likely going to use a Supercharge, especially in boss fights. So that leaves just 2 abilities that you can kind of mess around with. Sometimes 3, like I did show that I put on Debris Field. But for the most part, when it's a boss, this is what I have, just because I have 2 single target abilities, and then all the pets, except for Grim. So Crystal and Quizlet do AoE abilities. But if I need like a full AoE loadout, then this is what I'll use. I'll use Upheaval, get 3 hits on Upheaval, and then clip the last one with Striking Stones. And this used to be my standard loadout, but I found the other loadout with Sand Blast and Pebble Blast does more single target damage against bosses. And really that's mostly what it's about, trying to kill the boss as fast as possible. But if there's a lot of ads and that's part of the raid or the alert where you need to kill the ads as fast as possible, then I'll run that. So that's how I spec my ranged and my melee DPS running the pet build. Sometimes, like I mentioned, I do Supercharge as well. It's a slightly different loadout. I don't think I show it here, but yeah, so for the most part I use the pet build. Liking it so far. Does pretty solid damage, and if y'all have any questions, just let me know.